Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. I hope you all are happy and healthy. So guys, today video is on a poem that is among school children and it's written by W.B Yeats, that is William Butler Yeats. Talking about the poem, that the poem has 8 stanzas with 8 lines, which is also known as Ottawa Rima, and the poem is in a regular rhythm and a regular rhyme scheme of A B A B A B C C. And this poem is an epic poetry which is given by Yeats, so that this poem contains an epic reflection. The poem Among School Children was composed after the poet's visit to a convent school in Waterford, Ireland in 1926. This poem moves from a direct consideration of the children to Yeats' early love, Maud Gonye, and then to a passionate philosophical conclusion in which all of Yeats' philanthropic thinking blends into an exalted hymn of race to the glory and the puzzle of human existence. This poem Among School Children was written after the poet's visit to a convent school. This is how the poet describes his visit. The poet says that he was received by a nun who wore a white hood. White hood refers to a dress which is white in color, and she was assigned the task of showing the school to the poet and to answer his inquiries. The poet saw that the children were learning arithmetic and singing. They were also learning how to read books, how to cut and sew clothes, and be neat and clean in everything that they did. The children were also learning history. The poet observed that all these were taught to the children through modern techniques of teaching. The children stared with wonder at the poet, who was then a 60-year smiling figure to them. Moving to a second stanza, the poet then passes through the school and come across the female students who remind him of another Lydian beauty, Maud Gonye, with her well chiseled ladder-like classic features. The poet stands there in front of those little girls and recalls Maud Gonye that she must have once been a little girl at a school too. Yeats recalls an incident when Maud Gonye told him about those petty incidents of reproofs imposed on her by her teachers, and how the teacher caused great unhappiness to her and turned her entire into a tragedy. The poet had always sympathized with her till their soul had blended into one like the yolk and the white of an egg. In the third stanza, the poet thinks of a sad event that his beloved Maud Gonye once told him. He starts looking from one girl to another, wondering if any of them resembled Maud Gonye in her childhood. Maud Gonye was even compared to daughters of Swan, that is Helen, who was a very beautiful woman. The poet finds a resemblance in one of the girls who have the same color of cheeks and hair like his beloved Maud Gonye had. The poet's imagination runs wild and he sees his beloved standing before him as a living child. The poet W.B Yeats continues to dwell upon the image of his beloved Maud Gonye. He recalls her when she was an old woman. According to the poet, when Maud Gonye was old, she had hollow cheeks and looked old and descript milled weak, and but still she looked beautiful, like a piece of some Renaissance art. Then the poet thinks of his own old age. The poet says that though he was not very handsome, but he was presentable. But now he looks like a scarecrow. However, he believes in the idea that no matter how he looks, he should have a smiling face. There is no profit cribbing over the loss of youth and beauty. He tells us that we must keep smiling and love the way we are, and even if we have turned into a scarecrow, we should be comfortable being a scarecrow. In the fifth stanza, the poet then talks about the mothers who could see how ugly their sons have turned in their old age. If they could see the ugliness of their sons, they would not take the trouble of bearing children. Therefore, in such situations, sons would no longer bring joy to their mothers for the pain they have to bear during childbirth. The honey of generation is the drug which makes the newborn forgets the memory of prenatal freedom. Thus, the process of life will continue, and mothers too must forget how their children will look in their old age. In the sixth stanza, here the poet W.B Yeats refers to some of the eminent philosophers' theory. Plato explained the world as the reflection of God's ideas, whereas Aristotle whipped Alexander to make him learn, but the later learnt very little from him. And the Aristotle whipped means led a rope to hit people or the animals. Then the poet brings up another great philosopher and mathematician, Pythagoras, who claimed that he had golden thighs. He was a great magician and claimed that he could hear the musical sound of the planets that move around the orbits. What a poet wants to say is that all these qualities of this philosopher were of no use to them. They could stop old age from coming. Despite being so knowledgeable and wise, they became old with time and looked like scarecrows. Hence, time is omnipotent. The poet concludes that it is useless to mourn over the loss of youth and beauty. And the term time is omnipotent meaning having complete power over things or people. He wants to say that time has a complete power over everything and on every people. Nobody could compete with the time. Even the philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, Alexander, Pythagoras, etc. In the seventh stanza, the poet talks about holy nuns and mothers who worship illusions and merry phantoms. The images that saints worship are different from the images that are worshipped by mothers. The images in the churches which are lighted by candles are made of marble and bronze, but the images worshipped by mothers are of human figures. Both the images cause grief to their worshippers. Sons break their mother's heart by growing old, and stone cause grief by never changing. Therefore, neither the living nor the non living things give any permanent satisfaction to their worshippers. And in the last and eighth stanza, in the last and final stanza of Among School Children, the poet compares life to a chestnut tree. He says life is made up of opposites, very much like the chestnut trees, which has neither leaf nor blossom nor trunk, but a combination of all three. Similarly, the poet says that dancing movements of a human body cannot be separated from the dancer. The dancer and her dancing movements cannot be separated from each other. The body should not be tortured for the sake of a soul and vice versa. Both of them should exist in harmony. So, this is the brief summary of the poem Among School Children by W.B Yeats. Also, thank you everyone.